Anchors up, sales at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing all right, Jared. How are you doing today?
Doing good, doing good, doing good. New tradition, good tradition. And it's also foaming up, which is also a part of the tradition.
All right, another edition of Know Your Enemy coming your way, Jared.
Let's just keep them coming, man. Let's just keep them coming. You, me, every week doing a Know Your Enemy.
Yeah, let's do one more after this, right? Let's
Damn
do one
right.
more.
Let's just keep going. Screw it. Let's start taking. Let's play the worst. Who got worst team in the NFL this year? Someone secured the first overall pick, right? Well, let's play them. Play them after. Let's play them after Notre Dame. I'm going to call that shot right now too.
I think it was the Titans.
Okay, it was the Titans. Let's play the Titans after we play Notre Dame, win the national title. Let's get our ass beaten by the Titans, because that argument is always stupid. The NFL teams are way, way better. They're just way, way, way better. But let's just see what happens.
All right, let's get to know our enemy.
I think we may be able to take them. No, we can't. I promise you, no, we can't.
All right, the Texas Longhorns in the the SEC.
Yes, the SAC.
The transfer portal team of Texas.
Well, hey, let's not be throwing stones, my man. Although I will say, if there are any Texas fans watching, this entire idea that Ohio State is some sort of portal team is dumb. It is stupid. Only 2 players on our number 1 in the country defense are from the portal. The other 9 guys were recruited to Ohio State. The offensive breakdown is, I guess it depends upon if Trey or Judkins is starting, but all 3 wide receivers straight from Ohio State. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Hinsman is Ohio State. Saraveld, Ohio State. Josh Fryer, Ohio State. Chibola, Ohio State. Like, the only starters that are portal guys are maybe Judkins, Will Howard, Igbinosun, this is actually his second year at Ohio State. And then, of course, Caleb Downs. This idea that Ohio State is somehow a portal team filled with a bunch of portal players is false. Now, of course, 2 of our better portal guys were offensive linemen who got hurt, and they would be starting if they hadn't got hurt. Granted, but the fact of the matter is they haven't played in the playoffs at all. So whatever. Esquire beat me to it. All our O-line portal guys got hurt. But yeah, Simmons, yeah. Again, so it's Will Howard, half of the starting running back role in Judkins, a safety and a corner. That's it as far as the starters are concerned. And actually, the backup players are even more Ohio State. So F off, quite frankly, with this whole Ohio State bought their team stuff. But anyway, Kyle, we're not here to talk about Ohio State, at least not yet. We're actually here to talk about Texas. Is it time to get to know our enemy? But $20 million. Yeah. Okay. $20 million. I've invented this term. I'm sure I didn't invent it. I'm sure someone else invented it before me, but as far as I know, I invented it. Invisible money. Invisible NIL money. That is the money that Ohio State spent to keep the players on this team and not go to the NFL, or to keep them out of the portal.
Jared,
that's invisible NIL money. That's where that $20 million was spent.
But Oregon spent $22 million, and we saw how that happened.
Well, I feel like they spent more there. You know what? We're not talking about Oregon or Ohio State right now. It's time to talk about Texas. Yes, Squire. I like that I get to play straw man argument guy in the comments, and you're doing a fantastic job too. But we're here to talk about Texas. Kyle, The On3, the Texas On3 folks released a story, an interview with Quinn Ewers, and when they tweeted out said story, they called it a revenge game for Quinn Ewers. Now, if you go
That's
and
kind of
actually
stretching it.
now, I'm not even blaming the writers. It's probably not even the writers' fault. It's probably the social media people's fault.
It is. It's Texas. I'll see if I can pull that up here. But
Well, no. I'm saying it's probably the social media team. It's probably no offense to the guys who actually did the interview and wrote the interview story, unless they're the ones that tweeted it. But it's probably like a different social media team.
it is.
I just want to say this. Quinn Ewers appears to have nothing but love for Ohio State, and quite frankly, Ohio State fans have nothing but love. I mean, I guess I won't speak for all of Ohio State fans. I got nothing but love but Quinn Ewers. I'm happy he's found success at Texas. I hope he has the worst game of his life this week, but that's just business. That's not personal. If you go and you read the interview, the dude is insanely complimentary of Ohio State and the little bit of time he spent at Ohio State. But just bad show by the social media folks over at the Inside Texas On3 media team. Sark has a more phallic shaped head than I remembered. I'm not following up on that. In fact, I regret reading it. But yeah, Kyle,
So
Quinn Ewers comes into this game as maybe the most famous player, probably the most recognizable player. He's in the Dr. Pepper commercials. But this is a defensive football team. This kind of feels like a rehash of the Tennessee game in a lot of ways. It's a UT team. It's a team with a very famous quarterback, although is probably not the most notable, at least if you're being a football nerd about it, the most notable player on the field. Because Quinn Ewers, and again, I got nothing but love for Quinn Ewers, but Quinn Ewers is supposed to be like the generational Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, like quarterback.
Mm.
And he's just been very good. And he has been very good. And it's probably a difficult thing to deal with when you've been anointed as the next coming. And it turns out you're still he's still very good. But he hasn't been the next coming. Now, we could probably talk about
His backup quarterback.
well, I think Texas is probably in for a rude surprise there too. But we're not here to talk about little Manning today.
That'll be next fall. We'll talk about that.
We will. And we have Texas has inserted Manning into games at times, although I would say it's been much less during the playoffs. You could probably point to Texas and you can see, and I don't think Texas fans would disagree with this, because you can see this in where Texas put their recruiting dollars during National Signing Day in December. Weakest part of this team is their wide receiving core. Their second leading receiver is their tight end, which isn't always a bad thing, but it's Gunnar Helm, 58 receptions, 744 yards, 7 touchdowns. Matthew Golden's a very good wide receiver. He's their number one wide receiver, 56 catches, almost, he's coming up on 1,000 yards, nearly 17 yards per catch, 9 touchdowns. Matthew Golden's a very good wide receiver. After those two, it drops off pretty hard. You have a handful of wide receivers with about 30 catches. Isaiah Bond, DeAndre Moore. DeAndre Moore specifically kind of has a lot of touchdowns, but not necessarily the same yardage as some of his peers. So maybe Ewers isn't getting the help he needs from a wide receiver perspective at Texas. They have a good, compared to the last two running backs Ohio State has played over the past 2 weeks. I wouldn't call Wisner scary, Jordan James better, Sampson better running back, although both of those guys ended up leaving the game due to injury. But still a very respectable pair of running backs in both Windsor and Blue. I would say that overall, outside of Matthew Golden, this offense just doesn't have a lot in the way of scary weapons. Especially when you compare them to the Oregon team that Ohio State faced last week, or even the Tennessee team that Ohio State faced 2 weeks ago.
Not saying this is not a talented team at all, because they're very,
we're scaling
very talented.
We're scaling this by a playoff at this point. This is still among the top 5 most talented offenses that Ohio State has played this year. But when we scale this as a playoff conversation, as opposed to a regular season conversation, the offense is just kind of there.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. But it's Texas is one of those teams, and it was Ohio State before the playoffs. The talent is there. It's obviously there, but has Texas ever this year put together a full game, a full dominant game?
Well, they beat Colorado State 52-0. Does that do anything for you?
Honestly, I think the best example of them being dominant over a Power 5 team,
Michigan,
it's probably Oklahoma. It's probably Oklahoma.
Well,
it's probably Oklahoma when they won 34-3. That was probably their most dominant win over a tougher opponent.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been
Florida like, 49-17 is pretty good too.
We've seen bursts of how good Texas can be. And if Texas can be can maintain that momentum, can maintain how good they can actually be, this would be a shootout. This honestly would be a shootout. We saw it with Arizona.
These are the best 2 defenses in the country, Kyle. I wouldn't use the word shootout.
Hold on. If their offenses can get going the way that they can, it absolutely could be a shootout. But looking at the Texas-Arizona State game, Texas struggled. They did struggle at times offensively and
defensively.
I mean defensively, they started off. The only reason that like they really were in this game is their first drive plus the kickoff return. They went down and 2 plays, got a touchdown. Like oh man, this Texas team is really turning it on. And then they return a kickoff touchdown, 14 points. Wow, that's great. Are they going to keep that momentum going? No. They only scored 3 more points going into the 4th quarter. They only scored 10 points. 10 points after their punt return touchdown.
Very good conversation in the chat in regards to that. Spike says they have a weird offense that has a few explosions and then they seem to turn the engine off. Then Esquire responds with, think this is pre-scripted where Quinn knows exactly where he's going versus when he has to create on his own.
Yeah, we see that. There were times where Quinn kind of struggled.
Is it Quinn or is it the play calling that struggles after they get out of the script would be my question. And I'm not where he's going to throw the ball. But, you know, that favors Ohio State because we saw what they did against Oregon, like confuse the hell out of him. He did not know. It seemed like he didn't know what play was called here at times. Like it was. I was just mesmerized of how well Ohio State was able to confuse Dylan Gabriel, and now that you got someone who's Dylan Gabriel, by the way, maybe
more limited and struggling to read the field even more so than Dylan is able to. I really like Ohio State chances if they could continue this momentum. And there's still something in the back of my mind still, Jared, and I've talked to many college football fans the past week and a half here. The back of my mind is, yes, Ohio State has performed excellent these past 2 games, but we also know how they can be on the opposite side too. They just need to keep that momentum going. They just need to just keep doing what they're doing, and that's starting strong. It's starting strong.
Yeah,
Ohio State has done really well the first 2 games. I'm trying to find the Oregon game here because I know that they scored three touchdowns in their first 3 drives, and they scored two touchdowns in their first 2 drives. I don't think they did in 3 drives here, but definitely in their first 2 drives they scored touchdowns.
Against Oregon, it was 2 touchdowns and a field goal in their first 3 drives.
Okay.
But they did score in all 3
possessions,
drives.
3 scores. 3 possessions, 3 scores. Yeah, I'll take that over Oregon here. And if that was against Texas here, they score 17 points in their first 3 drives. That's a win.
That's going to be
to me, especially.
I think that's going to be a little bit tougher to do this time around. This Texas defense, points per game, 3rd in the country, only allowing 14 points a game. Yards per game, 3rd in the country, only allowing 270, let's just say 8 yards a game. Yards per play, just over 4 yards per play allowed. Yards per rush is the quote unquote weak part of their defense, where they allow 3.2 yards per rush, 12th in the country. That's the weakest part of their defense. Yards per pass, they are number 1 in the country, only allowing 5.5 yards per attempt. This is an excellent defense.
Yeah, in reference here, so 4.1 yards per play for Texas, ranked number 2, as Jared just said. Oregon was 4.7 yards per play, ranking them 12th in the country.
Well, where was Tennessee? I just this game, as far as just at least the pregame, matches more to Tennessee than it does Oregon. Oregon was a very, very good defense, but an out of this world offense, whereas Tennessee is more like Texas, where it's kind of a pretty good offense, but with an out of this world defense.
Here, I will put this in the chat, Jared, just for those that's watching YouTube, youtube.theswithcast.com, always be plaguing. 4.2 yards per play, and in a better yards per rush than Texas as well at 2.9 versus 3.2.
Yards per pass, though, Tennessee was at 6.1 as opposed to Texas's 5.5. So
that's interesting. That is honestly very interesting to see. Yards per pass, number 1 in the country. Honestly, that's really surprising for me to see that stat based on the first 2 games that we've seen Texas in the playoffs here.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
They've given up 50% of completions over 15 yards in the air was led up by this Texas defense. So
they've had problems with the deep ball as of late.
Yeah.
Now, what an often cited stat on the show is Ohio State has only allowed the other team to score over 20 points now twice. Oregon scores
only one team,
but only one team. Only Oregon. we'll just phrase it slightly different. Only Oregon has scored more than 20 points against this Ohio State defense.
How many teams has scored more than 20?
That's going to come back to bite you in the ass, Kyle, because Texas did allow Georgia to score more than 20 on them twice. So that phrasing is going to bite you in the ass. Yep. Let's only count one of the Georgia games. Let's only count one of the Georgia games. 1, 2.
Yep.
3.
Vanderbilt.
4, 5.
5.
Well, it's actually 4 because I counted Georgia twice.
Yeah. 4 teams, but 5 times. And Ohio State 1 team, but 2 times.
Yeah. Texas lost 2 games this year, both of them to Georgia. The second one was very close in the SEC title game. They did have to go to double overtime to defeat Arizona State last week. I say last week, and there's this pretty strong gambling trend, at least in the NFL, where if a team goes to overtime, and especially if they spend a lot of time in overtime, that they underperform terribly the next week. That being said, this game was 10 days ago, not 7 days ago.
Yeah.
That being said, that's the NFL where all the teams are much more closely matched. That being said, you could probably make a pretty solid argument that college football overtime is not nearly as physically demanding as NFL overtime. So a lot of caveats to stick on top of that. But there is a pretty strong trend that if you play in overtime one week, you tend to underperform the next week. But if we zoom out on that a little bit, we can very clearly point to the fact that Texas has been in two, relative to Ohio State, close games the past couple of weeks. Yeah. They have, and then if you add the SEC title game on top of that, that's their last three games, they've expelled a lot of energy, whereas Ohio State's only played 2 games in that same time frame and threw the car into neutral in both of those games in the fourth quarter.
Yep. I do want to
again, it's not the same thing as if it was 7 days in a game, or 6 days in a game, 6 days in a game, 6 days in a game. It's not the same. Granted, acknowledged, but that still adds up.
Yep.
So I think Ohio State's coming into this game more fresh. And Kyle, we need to talk about some of the defensive stars on this team.
Yeah, but before we do that, we're going to go ahead and take our first ad break. TheSloopcast.com is your go-to link to find all of your links Sloopcast related. Patreon.thesloopcast, Discord.thesloopcast, YouTube, merch, 7071, Spotify, all of those and other links over at thesloopcast.com. We'll take our first break and be right back to talk about the Texas defense.
I feel like, Kyle, you and I, we're in like end of season shape. I can set you up for something like that. You immediately know what I'm trying to do. You launch right into the ad break.
Yep.
Wish we could start seasons this well oiled.
So defense here. So concerns with me with Texas defense. Stellar all year. I mean, you're top 5 in pretty much the vast majority of the major categories. Like that's tough to do. That is very, very tough to do. I don't know if you had like Ohio State's stats, Jared. I don't know what very theirs quickly.
Are. In defense, it's number 1 almost entirely across the board, but I'll look it up for you.
Except for yards per pass, because that belongs to Texas. But either way, so Jared brings up a very good point about Texas being in close games the past few games. I'm going to ignore the SEC game because that was the SEC title game because that was more than a month ago. So I'm going to ignore that one. But the past 2 games against Clemson and Arizona State, it's been. They had to fight throughout the game versus like Ohio State. They kind of shut it down in the fourth quarter, 3.5 quarters into the game there. But looking at the last game, Texas defense on the field for 97 snaps.
Yeah.
97 snaps. I mean, credit to them that they only let up 24 points in 4 quarters. I mean, hats off to them that they only let up 24 points.
Trying to tackle Scadaboo, which was not easy. That's not.
He was. They did an excellent job through 3 quarters of holding down Scadaboo. Hats off to Texas. They did an excellent job of holding him down. But the fourth quarter happened, and we saw Texas starting to get tired. Scadaboo starting to make plays. Throwing the ball, catching the ball, everything to give Arizona State a chance to win the game. And I mean, what a hell of a story that would have been if Arizona State did win that game on
it was
the backs
close.
of Scadaboo.
It was double overtime. It was close.
Double overtime. Absolutely. Yeah.
Real quick, Ohio State points per game, 12.1, first in the country. Opponents yards per game, 245, first in the country. Opponents points per play, which I didn't include for Texas. 0.19 points per play, number 1 in the country. For the specific phases, opponents yards per rush, 2.7, number 2 in the country. Opponents yards per pass, 5.8, number 2 in the country.
We get number 1 and number 2 in yards per pass coming up here. Man, look at that yards per play or yards per game there. Texas number 3 at 277.9. And you said that Ohio State was 245?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a huge difference from 3 to 1.
Yep.
Like I was expecting it to be like, okay, maybe 270, 265, but 245. Like everyone just take a step back.
Yeah.
Realize how exceptional this defense has come along here. Everybody ripping on certain players, like, oh, we're not, and rightfully so, during certain parts of the year, the defensive ends aren't getting the pressure. We're not getting to the quarterback. Ohio
State made some
Iggy is
much
getting the pass
needed
interference calls, and Burke's name has been thrown around so much about him giving up long plays, but this defense has really, really come along.
And give Ryan Day
since the first Oregon game.
And give Ryan Day some credit here. If you go back and you listen to what Ryan Day was saying at the beginning of the year, because everyone's like, where's the tempo been? Where's the tempo been? And that includes playing Oregon twice. Yes, Spikes. Yes, it does. Where's the tempo been? Yada, yada, yada. Ryan Day very smartly foresaw that this could be a very long season and said, I want to limit snaps. I want to limit the number of snaps we play.
Ooh.
So this defense still has all of its starters. None of them have even shown up on an injury report in weeks. Again, I'm going to make a second NFL analogy here. Sometimes the team in the NFL who performs the best in the playoffs, sometimes the team that ends up winning the Super Bowl is the team that just doesn't have a lot of injuries at the end.
Yeah. I mean, look at Henderson.
In Ohio State, outside of their 2 offensive linemen, are incredibly healthy right now.
Look at the running backs. Henderson, 126 carries. Judkins, 174 carries. Well below what Texas's running backs, their top 2 combined are as well.
And you said it earlier that Texas's defense had, would you say 92 snaps?
97, almost 100 snaps
last week.
How did Arizona State not win that? Texas defense. That's
well.
The
there's.
answer,
I mean, that number is slightly inflated because of overtime. Acknowledged, but not a ton.
Sure.
It's only 2 very. But and this isn't the entire defense. But I remember seeing Ohio State's snap counts like per player from the Oregon game, and I think the highest ones were in the 60s, like mid 60s. Now, granted, that's per player and not the entire team.
85 plays, Jared. 85 through 4 quarters.
But the starter, I didn't see any individuals. I don't think I saw any individuals cross into the 70 territory. Is my point. On O-line guys, I'm talking on the defense.
I saw something like Jeremiah Smith. I'm drawing a blank on the exact number here. Maybe or somebody in the chat may know. Jeremiah Smith was on the bench a lot in the Oregon game, compared to like Emeka. Emeka was on on the field a lot more.
We teased that we were going to talk about the defensive standouts. We should probably pay off that tease.
Yep.
And again, I think this is the strength of this team. This is absolutely the strength of this football team. Where do you even start? Probably, maybe I'd venture to say the best player on the team, and this is obviously very arguable. Cornerback Barron wins the Blitnikoff, first team SEC. I think it's pretty expected that we're going to see him on Jeremiah Smith a lot. I think.
Yeah. Yep.
But can he cover aliens? We're going to find out. I don't know what kind of scheme Texas runs defensively. If they do if they're going to try and man up, I don't know if he's going to try and, I don't know if they would do a shadow. I don't know if it's a wide side, short side, weak side, strong side, how they do their defensive back alignments. But if they do a shadowing man-to-man, I've heard Texas runs mostly zone. They could try something. They've been giving up a lot of big plays over the past few games. They might change it up a little bit. But Barron is arguably the best player on this football team.
Hmm. He had 5 tackles against Arizona State, and one of them ended up being a sack.
Yeah.
And then against Clemson, he only had 1 tackle.
But that's kind of like what we talk about with Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke doesn't put up a lot of stats, and that's a good thing, right? He's your corner. You don't necessarily. It's not a bad thing when your cornerback doesn't put up stats.
Correct. Yep. So Denzel Burke has 43 tackles for the year. I'm actually looking for where he's at. Oh, there he is. Barron has actually quite a bit more. He has 61 tackles compared to Burke, who had, what did I say, 30 some?
Yeah, which would make sense if they're more of a zone team.
43.
Your defensive backs are going to get more tackles in a zone scheme.
Yeah. But I mean, that zone scheme sometimes pays off where you get more interceptions. They've turned the ball over a lot more than Ohio State. This defense has 21 interceptions versus Ohio State's 9 for the year. Barron has 5 of those. Andrew Makuba has 5 as well. Michael Taffy has 2 as well. Like their secondary are ball hawks. They really get after the ball. Yeah, I've seen that Z spikes. Yeah, that's Texas's plan there. Just triple team Megatron.
By the way, both teams are plus 0.4 in the turnovers. So as far as turnover margins concerned, Ohio State's 40 in the country and Texas is 35th in the country.
Oh, that honestly surprised me for how many turnovers this defense has.
Maybe
has. Yes. I was getting there for how many turnovers this defense has produced. I was surprised to see it was honestly that low. But
Ohio State is 93rd in the country for creating turnovers, but they're 19th in the country for not turning the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
I can look up Texas's real quick if you want me to.
It's fine. Let's look at some other players. Anthony Hill Jr. Leading the team in tackle for loss, over 100 tackles for this linebacker. He's second on the team for sacks as well. I think first on the team in forced fumbles. Going to be all over the field. Going to be definitely going to be an interesting matchup to watch. Hill versus the dual running backs of Henderson and Judkins here. But their defensive line, I know Jared and I have talked about this, I think, real briefly after the Oregon game here in our last Scarlet and Grade episode. This is a really tough defensive line. I know that we talked about Tennessee's defensive line would give Ohio State some struggles here, but this is a really stout defensive line here who's going to really test this Ohio State offensive line. That
Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Baron Sorrell, Alfred Collins, Varen Broughton. I mean, some of those guys are edge rushing linebackers, but you get the idea. And by the way, Texas is in fact just the opposite. They're number 8 in the country creating turnovers, but 86th in the country in protecting the ball. So take that for what it's worth. All right.
Anybody else you want to talk about here, Jared? Or
Muhammad Malik is their cornerback opposite Barron. Jalen Guibo, I'm sure I pronounced that terribly, is their nickelback. Taffy and Makuba are their safeties. I put down the best defensive players on the board, then I highlight the best ones. And with Texas, it was kind of impossible not to. It felt like I had to highlight them all. This is an incredibly. It's just a great defense. This is really.
Yeah. Here's an interesting stat I just found, Jared. So Texas has only let up 19 touchdowns for the year.
Okay.
Of those 19 touchdowns,
yeah,
only 3 have come from beyond 20 yards. So 16 of their 19 touchdowns allowed were within the red zone.
That's interesting because I saw that they were giving up a lot of big passes in the past couple weeks.
But apparently none of those really getting into the end zone, but maybe into
Possibly.
the red zone there. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing right here because I see Texas has let up their opponents were 19 for 19 on PATs, so 19 touchdowns. And their red zone touchdowns were 16 out of 37 attempts. But in the red zone attempts on their defense, they are 25 out of 37 in letting up points. Just pretty good. It's pretty good. But even more stellar, 16 out of 37 is only touchdowns. That's even better.
Well, since October, Ohio State's only allowed passing touchdowns against Oregon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's always going to be fun little statistical anomalies like that.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. So the real question here is if Ohio State can successfully pass the ball, and I'm not even talking successfully like they have the past 2 weeks. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying successfully like we've seen through most of the season passing the ball. I don't think it even has to be to the insane high. This is not going to be a game where Ohio State scores 3 times on the first 3 drives. I'm just going to say that right off the top. I think this Texas defense is way too good to expect that. I don't think you should be expecting Ohio State to absolutely jump on Texas the way they jumped on Tennessee and Oregon. I think this defense is too good for that.
Yep.
Especially against the pass. Number 1 pass defense in the country. I just don't think that's a fair expectation to keep putting on Ohio State that they do that for a 3rd week in a row. Now, will I be perfectly happy to be wrong? Yeah, I'll be perfectly happy to be wrong. Of course I will. I'm just tossing it out there. That's not my expectation going into this game. And if you think I'm being a Debbie Downer, or if you think I'm just being pessimistic for the sake of being pessimistic, let me say this. The only thing Ohio State has to do to win this game is score over 21 points. If Ohio State scores 22 points, they win. If Ohio State scores 24 points, they win. And you can write that one down. You can put that down in pen. You can hold me to that. The only thing Ohio State has to do to win this game is score north of 21 points. Because this Texas offense is not nearly in the same ballpark as good or as talented as Oregon's offense.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't scoring over 21 against Ohio State. 21 is a turnover assisted score for Texas. That's with some good ball bounces and maybe a terrible interception for Ohio State. Texas can score 21 against Ohio State. That's if shit goes wrong. So everything Ohio State has to do, score over 21 points, and they will win this football game.
It was 23 touchdowns allowed by Texas, actually. Then I dug into that a little bit more. But still.
I'm bracing for Texas to score in their first scripted offensive drive. I don't see that happening either. I know they're very good with their like initial scripted series. And hey, it's possible. But I'm not seeing it. But maybe. Yeah. I mean, Sark is one of the best scripters that is. If you're looking for a guy to script you the first 10 plays or whatever, Sark's very good at that. Do we win the middle 8 this time? I don't care. I don't know. I don't care.
I don't care. Yep.
Score more than 21 points. Surpass 21 points. Okay, Kyle. We're going to do our game predictions. We're going to do Austin's over-unders, and we'll do all of that after this ad break. Patreon, support us financially. We need it. Discord.thesloopcast.com for all of your Discord needs, for all of your Ohio State community needs. YouTube to watch, youtube.thesloopcast.com, or just go on YouTube and search Sloopcast to find the video version of the show. If you want to listen to just the audio only podcast version of the show, you can find us on Spotify at spotify.thesloopcast.com, or you can just go on your podcast app of choice and search Sloopcast. You'll find us. If you're looking for a raw RSS feed of the podcast, it's rss.thesloopcast.com. We have a pair of merch stores. Those addresses are on screen, or if you just need a list to all of those different addresses, you can just go to thesloopcast.com. No, I know what that scene is. We don't need to talk about that. The Teddy Ginn. Yeah. I know, Esquire. Kyle, let's do our game predictions.
Sure. Ohio State player to watch, Jared. Who do you got in this game?
Jeremiah Smith. He's just been the dude the past 2 games. And again, if you're trying to score at least 21 points, or if you're trying to score over 21 points, Jeremiah Smith's the guy that can get you some quick ones.
You know who has been the guy these past 2 games here? He's had, on average, in the playoffs here, 11.5 tackles and 1 sack average in the playoffs here per game. That is the captain. That is the Blocko where Cody Simon. I have Cody Simon as my Ohio State player to watch.
Okay, Kyle, enemy player to watch.
Ooh, this one's tough. Gosh, there's different ways that you can look at this. You can just say, hey, like, this offense is going to live and die by Ewers. How is he going to do in here? Like, Texas could not run the ball at all against Arizona State. They had like 50 some yards.
Yeah.
50 some yards against Arizona State. insert the not good Paul gif right there. But
Bob.
Yes, not good Bob. Yes, there it is. But I'm going to go with Jade Barron. I'm going to go with Jade Barron. Like he's going to be the difference maker if Jeremiah Smith is going to catch in a pair of touchdowns in this game or not.
Yeah, no, I also have Barron. I'm a little bit mad at. I'm also mad at you for taking that. It's clearly in the notes.
I wasn't looking.
I also I picked Jeremiah Smith as the offensive player to watch. I felt like it was pretty telegraphed who I was going to take as the enemy player to watch. And I'm not going to change it.
All right. Well, my second player to watch is going to be Anthony Hill. Would be Anthony Hill. He's the captain of that defense. Over 100 tackles, 16 tackle for losses for this year. So Anthony Hill is going to be guy to watch out to see if he can make some important tackles on Ohio State's running backs.
I mean, yeah, when it comes down to it, again, you're a team that since the playoffs started, you're Ohio State that has been, you're the team that's been dominant. You're the team that's been just killing it through the air. And the other team has the Blitnikoff winner. How is he not the enemy player to watch?
Key matchup? I know where you're going here, Jared.
Ohio State's wide receivers versus Texas defensive backs.
I think that is the number one matchup.
It's strength on strength.
I'm going with the disruptive side. I think the number two matchup here is, can Ohio State's offensive line continue having the success that they've had versus this stout Texas defensive line?
Yeah. Esquire says Texas drivers versus ice. They're expecting bad weather in Dallas for this game. That being said, I saw a lot of people getting excited about this. Jarrah World has a retractable roof. I'm sure it'll be closed. Hate to burst your bubble. This will not be a snow game. This will not be a, so as long as everyone gets there safely, the weather's not going to be a factor. Pieces fall off, but probably closed. Well, hopefully they got some netting or they check all the rivets or whatever so that nothing falls. That would be ideal.
All right, the spread in this game, Jared. We picked the harder one. Maybe depends on how you look at it. 5.5, 6.5 is the spread.
Depending upon the casino you look at, it tends to jump back and forth.
50-50. 50-50. 5.5, 6.5 in favor of your team in scarlet and gray. Not crimson. Scarlet and gray.
How does Herbie not correct? I know you're not so. I know that they're not supposed to correct each other. It's like a thing that you're not supposed to do in the booth. But have some Ohio State pride, Herbie, and help.
He's a Big Ten. He's a Big Ten guy, though, Jared.
Yeah,
he's a Big Ten guy. Though,
he's Mickey Mouse. Kirk Herbstreit is Mickey Mouse. He's a corporate.
Wears red. Mickey wears red, and that's more of a scarlet than a crimson in his overalls that he's wearing. But I digress. 6.5. 6.5 is the point spread, Jared, but that is not enough. That spread is not enough.
I agree. I have Ohio State to both win and cover. What's your final score, Kyle?
I got my final score of Ohio State 35, because I still don't trust field goals, even though they did really well against Oregon, 2 for 2 with some long field goals there.
Everyone sees my hands. Just everyone sees my hands. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. 35, Ohio or Texas 17. Okay. 35-17.
Kyle, can you tell, because it's in the notes already, which is why I'm showing everyone my hands. Yep. Can you tell everyone what my final score prediction is?
I get it. I get it now. It is Ohio State 31, I see you, Austin. Texas 13.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were all on the up and ups there. I have the memory of a goldfish. You expect... Okay, you know what? I'm sure he did say it. I'm sure I read it, but I have the memory of a goldfish.
All right, let's get into Austin's over-unders here.
Let's do that. By the way, just real quick, Spike says 42-17, Esquire says 38-13, and as we were joking about, Austin says 31-13.
They're all very, very similar scores if you're looking at it. Very similar. All right, Austin's over-unders for all the cotton horns down edition. Will Howard passing yards, 243.5 over. I'm not hesitating on that one. I am over on that one.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think it's probably worth pointing out Texas is only allowing 278 yards a game total. But they haven't played Ohio State yet. Second best pass defense in the country. Austin, by my math, and granted, a lot of teams might not use, or a lot of places might not use the same metric as I do. I use yards per pass. When I crown my best in the country, I have Texas number 1 in the country at 5.5 yards per pass. So.
All right. Next is Judkins touches at 12.5. I feel like that's under. I feel like that's under, especially for how well Henderson has been playing as well. And I think Ohio State will pass the ball more than they have in the past 2 games against this Texas defense. Check how many he's had against Oregon. I am looking that up right now. I have this open.
I'll answer while you do that.
I'm opening up the box score.
Okay.
And Judkins had, 17.
Yeah, I think
because they started running the ball more when they were up 21.
And you're saying that won't happen this game?
Well, it may, but
your score tends to indicate that. I mean, depending upon when those points happen, that you could have very similar outcome this game.
Possibly, yeah. I knew the answer before I was asking. That's called leading. Yeah. What do you got, Jared? I say under.
I'm going to go over because, again, Texas has the number 1 pass defense in the country, which doesn't necessarily mean that all of those. That could just mean there's a lot of checkdowns. On top of the fact that Ohio State might run the ball a little bit more this game, that also could mean that, Howard might be forced to check the ball down to running backs more often, which leads to more receptions for the running backs. So I'm going to go over on this one.
Okay. Judkins had 10 versus Tennessee, but 17 against Oregon in their last game. Total sacks in the game. Total sacks for both teams.
Yeah.
So obviously Ohio State has not given up. I don't think they've given up a sack in the playoffs yet.
I thought they had one against Tennessee.
They didn't have any against Oregon. I'm pulling up the Tennessee stats real quick here. Tennessee had 0 sacks as well. 0 sacks led up.
Okay. There was the face mask.
Offensive line.
Yeah. Spikes points out that there was one, but it was called back because of a face mask.
Sure. Texas. So I'm looking here. Texas led up 2 against Clemson. I think against Arizona State 3. So I'll say under. That's. I know Ohio State had a crap ton against Oregon. What was it like? I don't remember how many. It was a lot.
8.
They had 8.
They had 8 where Oregon, I believe, had only allowed, Dylan Gabriel had only been sacked like 12 times the entire 12 or 13. I said 12. Chat immediately jumps on me and says 13. 13. I love chat. And that wasn't sarcastic, very genuinely. I love having fact checkers immediately right there. Chat is hungry. We run a tight ship here. Yeah, Ohio State got 8 sacks against Oregon when Dylan Gabriel, at least, had only been sacked 13 times all year. They got an inordinate number against Tennessee as well. Quinn Ewers has been sacked 27 times this season. And that is with him missing a fair amount of time this season. He has missed at least a total game. He does, they do plug Manning in every once in a while. So, and by the way, that's minus 160 yards for Ewers on those 27 sacks. So I'm going to go over on this. And
wow.
I don't think Ohio State needs any help.
All right. So I got under, Jared's got over here. All right. Wisner plus Blue yards per carry at 2.9. Now, I know that they struggled heavily. They struggled heavily against Arizona State. I'm looking, Wisner had 2.5 and Blue 1 yard per carry. So average to, I think it was about 2.3 yards because Blue only had the ball 4 times. But it's very, very talented running backs here. My brain says over, but my heart says under. But I'm going with my heart here. I'm going to go under.
Under's the correct play here. Ohio State is allowing 2.7 yards per carry this season, which is pretty significantly under.
How many yards per carry? How many yards per carry did Ohio State let up against Oregon?
I don't know. How many?
It was negative.
Yeah.
Negative 0.8 yards per carry. But if we're taking that out, if we're taking the sacks out, it was 2 yards per carry by the 2 running backs.
Sure, that does change the math a fair amount. That's a good point. But I'm sticking with it.
All right. Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Wingo receiving yards, 171 and a half. I'll let Jared go first this time.
I didn't even include Wingo on the. I didn't even include Wingo on the board. I think he's their 4th wide receiver, in my opinion. Even I don't care what the depth chart says. That's. Okay, Austin brings up a good point. Jeremiah could get that by himself. That's why he chose the 4th wide receiver for Texas.
Yeah. Wingo has had 3 receptions for 40 yards.
Yeah.
Playoffs.
I think I now understand Austin's being cheeky because he's saying that Jeremiah Smith could get. I think that's going to be difficult for Jeremiah Smith to get that by himself, especially depending upon the debt, especially depending upon how Texas chooses to deploy Barron. Because if there is a cornerback in the country that can at least slow down Jeremiah Smith, it's probably Barron. If that person exists, it's probably him.
Yeah. I'll say under.
I'll say under.
Okay.
And notice I said slow down. I didn't say shut out. I didn't say stop. I said slow down.
Ewers passing touchdowns and interceptions combined for 3.5, which is what he had against Arizona State. 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. And he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception against Clemson.
I don't necessarily. I don't see this as being a heavy turnover game.
Yeah, I'm going to say under.
And I also don't. Ewers isn't getting 3 touchdowns either, so he would have to throw. I feel like the way this would cash in would either be 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions or 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. And I just don't feel like either of those scenarios are super likely. I'm going to go under.
Yep, under as well. All right. And last one is Ohio State's offense third down conversions at 54.49%. I know they were not good on third downs so far.
When Ohio State's offense is clicking, they don't even use their third downs. If that makes sense. When Ohio State is really clicking, they just go first down, second down, first down, first down, second down, first down. I mean, legitimately speaking, Ohio State gets 6.9 yards per play. And when the running and when they're passing the ball, that's 9.2 yards per play.
Yeah. I'll go under.
When they're clicking, they're not using third downs. When they aren't clicking, they are. And at that point, they're not clicking. So under. Yeah.
4 for 9, this offense against Tennessee, and 4 for 11 against Oregon.
42% for the entire season.
Okay. Another name I want to say out here, I know we briefly mentioned him, but I think he might be a big difference maker here. I know you have him highlighted in orange here, and you talked about him for a little bit here. Is Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
I think Gunnar Helm is definitely a problem for Ohio State there.
I don't think so.
Big, elite name.
It is an elite name.
What is it? He's leading the team in receptions, big target for viewers. Definitely keep an eye out for Helm.
Let me say this, Kyle. Ohio State has faced, through the Big Ten, has faced a lot of very good tight ends this year. One of which is transferring into Ohio State this season or next season. And none of them touched Ohio State. I feel like we still have this Iowa night game holdover in our head that we're weak against tight ends. We haven't been ripped up by a tight end in a while. When Ohio State gets ripped up by a pass catcher, it's typically a small slot guy. So I think that would probably be DeAndre Moore, I think, would be that guy for Texas, if not Isaiah Bond. I honestly forget which one of them's the slot guy. But that's typically when Ohio State gets Bond plays outside. Okay, so it is Moore. So if one of the wide receivers, if one of the pass catchers for Texas like has a big day against Ohio State, it's probably Moore. Because just the third slot guy is typically, like I said, the guy that does that to Ohio State. That's just the trend I've noticed over the past couple years.
Yep. All right. Well, hopefully they can continue that trend here.
Or not, and don't let anyone rip them up.
Well, yeah. All right. Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about or mention here?
No, we're over. Up? We are over. So do you have anything in Kyle's corner, Kyle?
The Cotton Bowl officials are planning for all inclement weather situations that may come up here. I don't see any chance that this game is going to be postponed or delayed or anything. I don't know if they've said it. Happen. I don't know if they've said it yet. I don't know if they've officially declared this yet, but bet the house that the roof's going to be closed. Like, just go ahead and assume the roof's going to be closed. There's zero chance in hell they're going to let it snow in there. I know they're projecting like 3 to 5 inches of snow, which is quite a bit in Dallas area, but
that's a lot for them. So it's fine. Like, just weather won't be a factor here. Anything else in Kyle's corner?
No, I think that's it. I think that's it. There's a lot that's happened here in the Buckeyes in the NFL and the transfer portal and other things too. But we'll save that for another time. We'll just end it here.
Yeah. Offensive tackle from Montana State. Keep your eye on him. Linebacker / edge rusher out of Georgia. Keep your eye on him. As far as new portal targets are concerned, and I think we'll leave it at that because, like I said, we're already super duper over. Tonight's ending music is by a metal band out of Cincinnati. They are called Valley of the Sun. Name of this song is Eternal Forever. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, Sports Local Podcasters. Once again, this is Valley of the Sun.